Welcome to Victoria 3, where I'm playing on the 1.06 patch update that just came out. In fact, while the gameplay is pretty spicy, an early Austrian war against Prussia, the real spicy news is that as of 11 minutes ago, at the time of recording, patch 1.06 has released, featuring performance fixes, AI changes, and a variety of other things. I'll cover them all off in this video. It'll be a shorter one than normal because it's a smaller patch. Speaking of which, of course, it's important to remember that while they did release this post-release plans sort of roadmap for Victoria 3, changes from warfare, I've got a separate video on that, historical immersion, diplomacy, etc., those are sort of more mid to longer term changes. And this update is very much living in the short term, fixing a variety of things that I think you'll be interested in. Most importantly, probably the performance and AI changes. Of course, we also know that this small patch, 1.06, is part of a larger patch that will be coming out before Christmas. That one they're calling patch 1.1, and it will feature changes more in line with the broader game, bug fixing, balancing, AI improvements, and user interface work. However, some of that has actually come early and featured today in this patch 1.0.6. The first one is really easy to cover. I swear there's more detail with some of the ones to come, but the first category that they touted was game balance, and here there was but a single change coming in this small hotfix patch update. They reduced the number of monthly radicals, those populations that don't get along, that will cause turmoil, and not really constitute to an overly productive or happy economy, have been reduced from political movements within your country to enact them and restore. This is fairly straightforward. It will make it slightly easier if you've been struggling with radicalism, particularly around political change and political movements, then it will have brought it slightly more in line with the rest of radicalism in Victoria 3. It may even be at a point now where you can substantially bring it down. Let's move along, because it's a fairly short one, and talk about performance now. There are a few things to cover. First up, they've tried to improve mid to late game performance by doing a couple of interesting things with populations, essentially reducing the number. This also, of course, is not just a performance upgrade, but could also lead to some quality of life improvements, perhaps by simplifying some of the more marginalized groups. What they've done is merged very small pops back into the general population. So the game isn't trying to potentially, I guess, run simulations for very small groups and a whole number of them. They've brought them into one. They've also forced unemployed pops to switch profession when sufficiently poor. I love sufficiently poor as a term of phrase there. But moreover, both of those things, of course, will work in conjunction to reduce the number of groups that it's trying to calculate. The second part of this involves improving the performance of two things. Firstly, updated trends for political movements, and secondly, enumerating liberation war goals. Now, if you're not like me, and you're not maybe a living thesaurus or a giant nerd, that basically just means to count. In essence, it's reducing the calculations across the board to try and improve the performance, is what it seems like to me. Moving along to the third category, and perhaps the more gameplay focused, as opposed to performance or back-end or bug fixing, we have some changes to the AI. Now, you'll notice that the bottom four on this list are fixes, rather than, say, more active changes. For example, fixing an AI acceptance for powerful protectors factor to appear in any alliance or customs union. Also, its confidence and peace desire for gold reserves not being capped to 100%. It incorrectly calculated how much an ongoing war or diplomatic play should add to their neutrality, and making them abandon allies due to involvement in smaller, less significant conflict. This matters. It's a bug fix, but of course it matters, because you might have had an AI ally who just randomly left to go and fight some colonial war of insignificance while you were busting your backside on the Austrian front line, for example. The final fix was the involvement in a diplomatic play, shown as an empty string in their neutrality calculation. So some difficulties going on at the back end that have been fixed to hopefully make the AI's behavior feel better. The change, the first thing on the list, is an increase in the AI's tendency to stick by its allies and subjects in conflicts. This kind of relates to that third fix in a way. Basically, the AI may stand by you if it's your friend in conflict, and it may also, if you want to think about it on the flip side, reduce potentially the ability to catch the AI off guard by its allies abandoning it. This gameplay might very well be a good example. I start a cheeky war from Austria against Prussia, and slowly over time, the Russian allies of the Prussians and the UK allies, again of the Prussians, fall away. Whether that was a mismanaged front line or just the fact that they didn't have troops or they weren't prepared, I'll let you be the judge. The final factor to consider for today's patch update were the bug fixes. Not the ones that we've already discussed related to AI, but sort of a random list of things. I'll put them on screen here and you can have a look at them. I won't spend too long on these because they're unlikely to have affected you, or at least hopefully they haven't. One of note, that second one, properly fixed flotillas not recovering morale. There's a lot to unpack there. I'm not sure to what extent flotillas, our navy, wasn't able to recover its morale and therefore maybe not successfully launch another naval invasion or stop that convoy from being raided or enemy supply lines. I don't know. The Navy's very important in Victoria 3 and often, I think, overlooked. Other bug fixes include American territory achievements and other political movements as well. They might have still been triggering revolutions when they shouldn't have. That's been adjusted. I'll let you look through the little list there. The important thing to remember is how this patch update fits in with the rest, and with what's coming likely in the next few weeks, most certainly this side of Christmas, in the free 1.1 patch update. That's where, again, as a reminder, we'll be looking at what we've seen today, but probably at a wider scale. It is, after all, a more sequential major update, being a 1.1 instead of a 0.0 point what have you. The focus will, of course, remain similar to this one. Bug fixing, balancing, AI improvements, as well as overall game polish and UI work. And outside of changes to warfare, the UI and also the game's performance has been one of the things that I've heard the most from many of you in the comments time and time again as being one of the most significant issues in Victoria 3. So to get this sort of groundwork foundational patch out the way this year will be a great move. It is, of course, not just looking at some of the more boring back-end things, but also fronting some gameplay-focused changes. The really important thing, like population needs, actually being brought to the fore so it's easier to visualize and work with. This fundamentally determines how you run an economy. I released a video on that yesterday if you'd like to see how to run an economy in 10 minutes or less. But also, of course, we're looking at changes to the legitimacy system in governments as well. An illegitimate government won't be able to pass laws. A legitimate one will generate loads more loyalists. Either way, I should leave this video here. It was a relatively small update. I'll be looking forward to the next patch update, likely coming in December of 2022, and I'll be sure to update you on that and all of the rest of the goings-on in Victoria 3. But for now, I'm going to go to bed, because it's late. Enjoy your day, everybody, and I'll see you next time.